When I was a child, my world revolved around a small, quiet lake tucked behind our old farmhouse. My father used to take me there before dawn, the air cool and heavy with mist. We'd sit by the water's edge, watching the sky blush from gray to gold as he taught me how to cast a fishing line. "Patience," he'd always say. "The lake rewards patience." That lake was more than water to us. It was memory, family, peace. When he passed away, the deed to the land, including the lake, became mine. I promised I'd protect it with the same love he had. Years passed and time changed the surroundings. The farmland around the lake was sold off bit by bit. Soon, a suburban development rose where wheat once swayed. Expensive homes circled my lake, their owners bragging about their Lakeview properties. The new neighborhood formed an HOA, Homeowners Association, supposedly to maintain order and beauty. But anyone who's ever dealt with one knows how controlling they can be. They didn't like that the lake wasn't theirs. It sat right in the middle of their fancy neighborhood, but legally it belonged only to me. My fence marked the boundary, and my signs made it clear: private property, no fishing, no swimming. The HOA members saw it as defiance. They wanted control of everything within their community, even what wasn't theirs. At first, they pretended to be friendly. Letters arrived from the HOA office with polite words and fake smiles, asking me to consider donating the lake to the Association for Community Enjoyment. I refused. The lake was family land. It wasn't for sale, not for sharing, and certainly not for people who saw it as a backdrop for Instagram photos. After my refusal, the tone shifted. More letters came, but now with threats hidden behind legal terms. They spoke of liability, public nuisance, and unsafe access. Then came the gossip, neighbors whispering that my lake was polluted, that I was an outsider hoarding nature. Trash began appearing near my fence. One night, someone spray-painted "selfish" across my property sign. I could feel it building. It wasn't about the lake anymore. It was about control, ego, and pride. Then one morning I stepped outside and everything felt wrong. The air smelled sharp and sour. The lake's surface shimmered strangely under the sun, a faint green film rippling where the water should have been clear. When I looked closer, my stomach twisted. Fish floated near the edges, pale and lifeless. Turtles lay motionless on rocks. I knelt down, scooping a handful of water. It smelled of chemicals, not nature. My hands trembled as I called a local environmental lab to test the water. The results came back 2 days later. Traces of herbicides, high levels of toxic compounds used in commercial landscaping. Someone had poisoned my lake. I didn't need to guess who. The HOA had recently signed a contract with a landscaping company. I had seen their trucks around, green and white, with big tanks and hoses. They were the only ones with the access and the motive. I contacted the authorities, but the HOA claimed it was an accident. They said the chemicals had accidentally flowed into the lake during lawn treatments. But that didn't explain the cameras I installed later, small ones hidden along my fence line. Within a week, they caught everything. 2 men unloading equipment at night, dragging hoses into the lake, pumping something into the water, then driving off under cover of darkness. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Because I knew something they didn't. 2 years earlier, the HOA had switched its irrigation system to a cheaper, local source. That water source came directly from the underground spring that fed my lake. In poisoning my water, they had poisoned their own. Over the next few weeks, complaints began spreading through the community. Families noticed their tap water tasted metallic. Their kids had rashes after bathing. The HOA sent emails reassuring everyone it was a minor plumbing issue. But I knew what it really was. The same poison-killing fish in my lake was now seeping into their homes. I waited until their panic reached its peak before striking back. I gathered every piece of evidence: the video footage, lab results, property records, Invoices from the landscaping company signed by the HOA president himself, a man named Carl. Then I called an emergency town meeting. As the legal owner of the lake, I had every right to attend. Carl stood before the crowd, sweating through his button-down, trying to convince everyone that the city water was to blame. He talked about natural contamination and climate effects. But when I stood up holding the folder of evidence, the room fell silent. I laid out every document, every picture, every test result. I showed them the late-night videos of their hired men pumping toxins into the water. I showed them the map proving their irrigation system drew from the same spring that fed the lake. Then I said just one sentence. "The water you poisoned for me is the same water your children are bathing in." The room erupted. People shouted, gasped, turned on the board. Carl went pale, stumbling over excuses, trying to pin it on the contractors. But the truth was undeniable. His signature, his authorization, his arrogance. It was all there. Within days, environmental investigators arrived. They confirmed deliberate contamination. The HOA was fined heavily. The landscaping company lost its license. And I sued. The lawsuit was long and exhausting, but I never gave up. The evidence was too strong. The HOA tried to settle quietly, offering money, but I wanted justice, not hush money. Finally, the court ruled in my favor. The HOA was held responsible for environmental damage, property contamination, and illegal activity. They were ordered to pay full restoration costs, my legal fees, and an additional fine for trespassing. The county forced them to replace their entire water system at their own expense. The total cost? Over $2 million. The same people who once mocked me for owning that useless lake now had to pay for every drop they depoisoned. Carl resigned in disgrace. Some families moved away, unable to handle the shame and cost. The ones who stayed learned something about respect, for nature, for boundaries, for consequences. Meanwhile, I began restoring the lake. I hired experts to neutralize the toxins, aerate the water, and bring life back. It took months of patience. Then, one morning, I saw a single fish jump through the surface, sparkling in the sunrise. That moment broke me. I sat down on the dock and cried. Not out of anger, but relief. My father's lake was alive again. Today, the lake glows the same way it did when I was a child. The air smells clean, the water reflects the sky like a mirror, and the sound of ripples feels like forgiveness. The HOA no longer dares to cross the fence line. They learned the hard way that greed and cruelty always come back around. Sometimes I sit there at dusk, the fishing line resting in my hands, the sky bleeding orange and purple. I whisper to the water, "We made it, Dad." They tried to poison my peace. Instead, they poisoned themselves, and the lake, our lake, endured.